Let me ask you this. What is the worst Sonic game that you have ever played? What game comes to mind when you hear this question? It is Sonic 06 because of its terrible controls, shit ton of bugs, and the permanent stain it put on Sonic as a whole? Is it Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric because of its infamous bugs, terrible graphics, and putting another massive stain on Sonic as a whole? Is it something like Sonic 4 because it's a painfully mediocre sequel to what a huge majority consider the greatest Sonic game of all time, having terrible graphics, controls, and levels? Or maybe it's one of the other terribly received Sonic games that exist. Whatever it is, while you're completely entitled to your opinion and I respect it, you're wrong. Because what if I told you that there is a game even worse than all of these games? One that I almost never see mentioned ever in any discussion on bad Sonic games despite being objectively worse than all of them. That game being Sonic Jam. Now I can already hear some of you say, wait, isn't Sonic Jam a good Sonic game? And you'd be right! It's a great enhanced collection of the first 4 mainline Sonic games brought to the Sega Saturn with extra bonuses like character info, concept art, music, a lot of artwork in general, official Sonic animations, videos, and advertisements at the time, the first ever release of the fully uncropped and high quality version of the Sonic CD intro, as well as an entire goddamn fully 3D world called Sonic World where you could freely run around as Sonic and complete challenges as well. For the time it released, then Sonic Jam is an amazing collection packed to the punch with a boatload of extra bonuses and Sonic history for die-hard Sonic fans to enjoy. However, it's not the Sonic Jam that we're talking about today. You see, Sonic Jam wasn't just released for the Saturn. Sonic Jam also came out for the Gamecom. And this is the version of the game that I'm gonna be yapping about today. So go get some drinks, make some popcorn, and get comfortable in your bed, because I'm gonna tell you why this game f***ing sucks and why it is, in my opinion, the worst Sonic game of all time. He said it! He said it! Now, some background knowledge on the Gamecom, because I'm certain that most of you have never heard of this thing ever in your life. The Gamecom, written as game.com, but the dot is silent, so it's pronounced Gamecom for some stupid f***ing reason, was a handheld device released in 1997 as a competitor to the Game Boy. 8 years after the Game Boy released. It was also made by Tiger Electronics. You know, the company that made those shitty licensed LCD handhelds that felt more like toys for parents to shut their kids up with rather than actual game consoles. Despite all these things though, the Gamecom did have some things up its sleeve. It was the first console to have a touchscreen, and it was the first handheld console to have internet. Only problem is both of them sucked. The touchscreen, while working perfectly fine, was only ever used for the main menu and some incredibly basic games, and the internet capabilities, while being impressive, was way too expensive for what it was. Not only did you have to pay $70 for the console itself, but you also had to pay an extra $50 for a compatible modem, as well as an extra $20 for an internet cartridge. All of these add up to $140. And adjusting for inflation, this whole package would cost you a whopping $274 today. On top of that, you also had to be subscribed to a compatible internet service provider, which barely anyone had in 1997. All of this just to send and read email. You couldn't even look at images with this thing. Not to mention all the wonderful marketing for this console.
I was surprised for all the slackers, but nothing better to do than play games and surf the net all day. Gamecom begs to be touched. Wires you to the internet, and it plays more games than you idiots have brain cells. Idiots have brain cells. Idiots have brain cells. Any questions?
That shit is f***ing trash, dog. Get the
Gamecom Pocket Pro, the only portable cartridge system that plays Resident Evil 2.
With all this information in mind, it shouldn't come as a surprise to you that this thing flopped, selling less than 300,000 units and lasting only 3 years before being discontinued. During those 3 years, only a pathetic 20 games released for the system, most of which being licensed games from different IPs that Tiger got the licenses to that were made in-house, with one of them being Sonic the Hedgehog. And that's how this game came to be. Now with all of that aside, how do you even play this game in current day? Well, you can obviously just buy the console and the game itself on an online second-hand store like eBay and play it on real hardware the way it was intended. The problem is, it's a bit expensive. and I feel like that's way too much for an incredibly shitty experience. Also, the screen of the Gamecom is incredibly small, has no backlight, and is prone to ghosting to add to injury, so your best bet is to emulate it on your PC. You have two options for emulation. The first one is using the emulation program called MAME. This was how I was originally gonna play it, but I found it personally incredibly confusing to set up, and from what I've seen, the emulation isn't that great either. So your best bet is by using the official emulator that the developers of Gamecom games used. I'm not kidding, this shit leaked way back in 2011 for everybody to use. It even includes the source code for the Frogger game made for the system. I also found a link on Reddit that includes the emulator and a guide on how to use it, which I'll link in the description down below. Alright, I think I said enough, let's just get to the game already. I don't know how to transition into the next part of the video. When you start up the game, you get greeted by a title screen similar to the one on the Saturn version. After pressing A, you get brought to the game selection screen, and there's already an issue. We haven't even gone into the gameplay itself, and it already has an issue. So you know how Sonic Jam is supposed to be a collection of the first 4 mainline Sonic games, right? Right, okay. So where the f is Sonic 1? Yeah, for some reason the first ever Sonic game, the one that kickstarted it all, the one that is the sole reason these games exist in the first place, is just left out. I get that this was probably due to either hardware or time constraints, but why Sonic 1? It's the most well-known Sonic game out of them all. Why couldn't you have... whatever. Let's just move on. After picking a game, you then get to decide who you want to play as out of the main trio, and afterwards, the actual game begins. Right off the bat, you're immediately popped into the game and dear God, what are these controls? Without a doubt, this may be the worst way that you've ever controlled in a Sonic game. Unless you count the Sonic Riders Connect game, but I haven't played that game myself, so don't take my word for it. Control and speed are two of the most important things to get right in every Sonic game, and this game throws both of them out of the window. The game runs unbearably slowly, which, considering this is a Sonic game, is not what you want. You are also unbearably slippery, which makes the game feel like you're on ice the whole time. You can also barely walk up on slopes without sometimes having to unnecessarily walk back to gain speed or spin dash. The physics in this game are horrid. You descend way too quickly, which combined with the slow speed and small game window makes all the platforming segments in this game nearly impossible to do. And the spin dash is... fine. It works the way intended. Speaking about spin dashing, I wanna talk about all the characters and their abilities. Sonic is a default basic character. He can jump, spin dash, and that's all he can do. Self-explanatory. Tails can jump, spin dash, and also fly, which makes the game easier. More about him later. Knuckles is the exact same as Sonic. No gliding, no wall climbing, no nothing. Just a jump and a spin dash. There's no benefit to picking Knuckles unless he's your favorite character. Here's a tip if you want to play this game yourself. Always pick Tails. He's the only way you're ever gonna be able to get far in this game thanks to his flight being absolutely broken in this game. Like you skip huge portions of the level because they were not designed with flight in mind at all. So yeah, unless you want a challenge or you're a masochist, pick Tails if you just want to experience the game. Moving on to the levels themselves, remember what I said earlier about the game lying about being a collection of the first 4 mainline Sonic games? Well, they lied even more, because none of these levels exist in the original games. They were all completely new levels built from the ground up just for this game using some sprites for the first level of the game it's based on. Each game has 5 stages with 2 of them featuring bosses, and that's it. Other than that, they would be okay if it wasn't for the god-awful controls making them worse than they seem. If the controls were actually good, then these would be some okay mid-tier levels at best. Fun fact, from what I've heard, this game uses a bitmap system instead of a tile-based system like most Game Boy games, which means that one level is one whole ass image instead of texture atlases and metadata. This explains why the game is so slow. The Gamecom just barely handles displaying an entire image, resulting in the slowdown. Moving on, for the last part of this video, I wanna talk about some of the highlights of what I experienced this game, but before I do that, I wanna talk about the music for a little bit. I've been holding off of showing the music, and there's a good reason for that. A Sonic game's music could potentially be the saving grace for the entire thing. If there's a Sonic game that sucks but has good music, all the defenders of it will use it as an argument in favor of the game. So if this game wants to bump up its rating by a few digits, then it needs to have a soundtrack that is the equivalent of a blowjob for your ear. So, how does the music sound like? that's something. This is such a boring, lifeless nothingness of a soundtrack. Each song has like the exact same BPM, it's so damn bland. What are these even supposed to? Oh. So if you speed up the soundtrack by about 2 times speed, you can actually make out what Sonic sounds these are based off. I guess this makes the OST a little better? Doesn't change the fact that it's still boring as f, so who cares? Now with that out of the way, I wanna talk about some of the highlights of my playthrough of this game. The first being this section from the second stage of Sonic 2, where you have to jump your way to the other side, and if you fail then you fall in the bottomless pit and die. With the shitty physics and small game window, this makes this part of the stage almost impossible to get through unless you're using tails. Annoying as hell. In the Sonic 3 part of the game, I found a giant ring which leads me to the Blue Sphere stage, except it's renamed to Black Sphere because the game could only display in black and white. These motherfuckers are the even doppelgangers of Blue Spheres. In the same Sonic 3 stage, I tried to go up the 3D tree that was in the original game, which would have been kinda cool if not for the fact that if you press any button during this, you fall back down and the game softlocks you, leaving you no choice but to kill yourself. The last highlight that I want to mention is the X-Scorcher Mark III boss in Sonic 3, which normally in the original game would go behind the waterfall and then pop out at a certain point to attack. But in this game, thanks to the hardware limitations, he doesn't go behind the waterfall visually except for one singular visual indication that you can easily miss, so you better pay attention or die! The bosses in this game are just a pain in the ass in general, thanks to the shitty hitboxes and bad physics of the game. I didn't get to beat this game, however, I've experienced enough as is. Let's get on to my final thoughts. Sonic Jam for the Gamecom is, without any singular doubts, the worst Sonic game of all time. This title has been given to multiple Sonic games over the years, but what makes this game stand out from those games is that there are zero redeeming qualities about it. No exaggeration. Terrible graphics, terrible controls, terrible physics, boring, soulless music, game-breaking bugs. It's hard to point out something positive in this game. At least with other bad Sonic games, there are still some qualities you can easily point out. Sonic 06 has some pretty good level design. Sonic Lost World has some pretty interesting controls that work very well. The Sonic Boom games had some pretty interesting ideas. The Storybook games have some of the best characterization of Sonic. Sonic Blast has some good bosses. I could go on. What I'm saying is this game has nothing going for it. Nothing. Nothing at all. Its only purpose is to ruin your day and that's it. And all of these reasons are why, in my opinion, Sonic Jam for the Gamecom is the worst Sonic game of all time. Now, I gotta reiterate that what you view as the worst Sonic game is up to you to decide. This video wasn't made to change people's opinion, I just made it to talk about what I personally think is the worst Sonic game. You can disagree with me on this and say that Sonic 06 is a worse game than this because it had a much more negative impact on the series, or that Sonic Blast is a worse game because you personally had a worse time with it than this. At the end of the day, everyone has differing opinions because everyone is different. And that's fine, that's good. You just need to be respectful towards each other and that's it. I'd personally love to hear your thoughts about what your personal worst Sonic game of all time is and why. So feel free to comment it down below. And don't forget to be respectful towards each other. Please don't start all out wars in the comments section over the blue anthropomorphic hedgehog. Thank you so much for watching this video about me rambling about a shitty obscure late 90s Sonic game. I hope that this video was good and that you at least somewhat enjoyed it. Side note, I genuinely do not recommend you playing this unless you wanna laugh at the game by yourself or with your friends. It is not worth your precious time. Oh shoot, I almost forgot. Apparently there was also meant to be a Sonic 3D Blast port for the Gamecom, but it got cancelled. I mean, I like Sonic 3D Blast. I think it's a good game. So I'm happy that it got cancelled because they didn't get to ruin it. But anyways, once again, thank you for watching this video. Make sure to get your daily water intake and stay hydrated. Make sure to eat and drink healthy. Make sure to go outside and enjoy the beauty of nature and breathe in some fresh air. Unless it's summer, in which case you should stay inside unless you wanna burn alive. Make sure you stay fit and healthy. Make sure to hang out with your family and friends. And finally, play Sonic 3D Blast. Bye!